Hey, it's Whitney from EcoVeganGal.com, and welcome back to the live Q&A, which happens every Saturday right here on the Eco Vegan Gal channel on YouTube. Today I have a very special guest with me who I'm going to introduce momentarily, but first I have a few announcements, and I will begin with a few words for those of you who are brand new to these Hangouts. I want to explain to you how they work. So you are watching live right now, or, well, I shouldn't assume that. There's two ways to watch this. You can watch live on Saturdays during the designated time, or you can watch or listen to the recording. The recordings are on YouTube, and then later they're uploaded to SoundCloud. For YouTube, you can watch them just like a regular video, and for SoundCloud, you can just listen to them. You can download them to your computer or a mobile device, whatever works best for you, so that you can absorb the information in whatever setting works in your life. If you're watching live, it's really neat because you can actually ask your questions live, and we will be taking questions towards the end of this. The way that the structure of these Hangouts work is I actually take 5 to 7 questions from people who have asked in the past and prepare those to answer, and then I do the live questions towards the end, usually the last 20 minutes or so of the Hangouts. And the Hangouts usually last about an hour, sometimes it goes over a little bit. And you can ask your questions live at google.com/+EcoVeganGal. If you're having trouble finding that website, you can find it at the Eco Vegan Gal Facebook page. You can go to the Eco Vegan Gal Twitter page. You can even go to the guest page, which is Gena of Choosing Raws, and just click right on there, and it'll bring you to the live event page. And then to ask your question, you can ask it at any point, and it gets put into the queue, and that is through the Q&A app. So you can't ask on the page, the event page, you can't ask on YouTube, you have to ask through the app. But the cool thing is the app is available for your computer, as also on most mobile devices like iPhones and Androids and all that. You just have to download the Google Plus app or the Google Hangouts app. It sounds a little complicated, but most people figure it out. And if for some reason we don't see your question, it gets cataloged for the future, and I will answer that again. But we just don't know if we'll be able to bring on Gena once again. Maybe we will. We'll see how it goes and if she likes it. So anyways, please ask your questions at any point. If you're watching the recording, you can ask your questions through a form. There's a form in the description field of YouTube as well as on SoundCloud. It is bit.ly/EVGWeeklyQA, and you can ask your questions at any point, at any recording, and those again get cataloged, and then I can answer them in the future as we're going to be doing today. And the other cool thing about sending your question in after the fact is you could actually submit it through a really cool feature called SpeakPipe, which is entirely free, and it allows you to record a voice message version of your question, and I get to hear your voice, which is so cool. I have them every once in a while. I don't have any to play today or that I'm going to address today, but it's such a neat way to hear people's voice. And lastly, I want to say that if you have a really sensitive question and you don't want your name heard, you can actually opt to be anonymous. So if you do it through the form, you can just, there's a little section where you can click that you want your name to be kept anonymous. And if you record your voice, you just don't have to say your voice, or you can also just ask me not to play the recording out loud if it's just for me. I think that's it in terms of questions there. Next off, if you're watching the recording, I know these are a little bit on the long side, so I've actually created timestamps in the description fields of both YouTube and SoundCloud for you. You can click forward to a very specific section and only watch that section if you'd like. Even on YouTube, there's a share feature where you can share just that little section. So if you want to share this information, which I hope you will, you can link directly to that clip, and that's under the share settings of YouTube, which is really neat. And I think that's it for now. I also have a few things that I want to say before we jump into the questions with Gena today. First of all, I want to remind you that there is the EVG book club that has relaunched recently, and we have a book that we're reading for August. We're going to do like a speed run through, and then we're going to do a full-on launch in September. We haven't picked the book for September yet because the way the Eco Vegan Gal book club works is I put up a few options, and then everybody that's part of it gets to vote on which books we read or listen to as audiobooks. But this month, I went ahead and chose a really amazing book that I've been reading called The 7-Day Allergy Makeover by Dr. Susan Bennett. Gena, I would highly recommend this book to you, too. I think you would love it.
I have to read this given my horrific seasonal allergies. Seasonal allergies.
I'm telling you, whether you have allergies or not, this book is insanely eye-opening on so many levels, and I've actually talked about this in past videos. So for those of you who watch all of the Ego Vegan Gal videos, I'm not going to repeat it all, but all I can say, Gena and anyone else new watching, this is a must-read. Gena, especially from like a nutrition standpoint, an overall health standpoint, I think you would really.
I can't wait. I'm a fall allergy person more than I am a spring allergy person. Whatever. I don't know what blooms more in the fall, but my allergies are worse pretty much right now. So this is the perfect moment for me.
It's so great. And for everybody watching, including Gena, I always have links in the description field for people if they want to get stuff that's mentioned. So whatever products or books or websites we mention, all of those will be linked down below so you don't have to go searching for them on your own and try to find them. Make it super easy. The second thing that I want to mention before we jump into the questions today is I received 2 questions this week regarding the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. And I was so inspired by them. I got one from Jennifer and one from someone who wanted to remain anonymous. And they were so compelling. Basically, these 2 women wanted to know what my opinion was on the Ice Bucket Challenge. And they also wanted to know what organizations they could support that don't test on animals. And I felt like this was such an important topic to address that I recorded a completely separate video along with Jason Robel. And that went up yesterday. And I'm so grateful that the feedback on that has been phenomenal because it's a very, very touchy subject, and we tried to cover it as in-depth as possible. We talked about what ALS is, why they test on animals, what you can do to support organizations that don't test on animals. And we even got into things like how much water is being wasted through the Ice Bucket Challenge and all sorts of other aspects of it, what our opinions are. It really was such an amazing thing to research and ponder, and reading all the comments is another thing I highly recommend because there are just so many different opinions on this matter, and because it's become such a big social trend, I feel like it's such an important thing for us to educate ourselves on. It's so easy for us to watch 30-second videos of people pouring ice on their head and screaming and all of that, but to really get into why they're doing it is so important. But also not enough people have addressed the fact that unfortunately a lot of the money that is being donated is going towards animal testing, which is something I personally am strongly against. And so if you want to learn more about that, about what happens with animal testing, where your money is going, and what you can do to avoid supporting animal testing, please watch that video. As you can see, I get so fired up about it, and I just really want to continue spreading the word so that we can find a way to heal ourselves, which is a huge topic of this video specifically, but in general, even with these scientific research, there are ways to do it without animal testing. There are ways to find cures to things without involving horrific conditions for animals. And I feel like the more people that speak out about this, the more people that get educated and do something about it, the closer we're going to get, the faster we're going to get to it. So please do something about it, and thank you so much for considering that. All right, so speaking of healing, we have a lot to address today with Gena. I am so thrilled that she's here today on so many levels. She is someone that I have admired and adored for a very long time, and it's great timing now because she just came out with a phenomenal book called Choosing Raw. I have it on my iPad here, and she probably has a hard copy, I'm imagining, that she can hold up.
I'm all out. I actually sold my last copy that I had at home in the nutrition practice where I work here in New York yesterday. So I'm out. I have more copies coming on Monday, but I don't have anything to show you guys. But it's on Amazon. The title is Choosing Raw, just like my blog. Whitney has the Kindle version. It's right there and looking good. So yeah, you can get the Kindle copy, or you can get it's a paperback original, and you can find it today on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, IndieBound, Books A Million, and on iBooks. So.
Yes, it's very easy to get, and it is a must-read. I have read so many reviews of your book. It has exploded over the internet. So many people love this book, including myself. And I just wanted to quickly summarize why I love it and then give Gena a moment to introduce it as well. For me, what's so phenomenal about this is it's a really beautiful intersection between raw and cooked plant-based foods. The title of Gena's blog and website, book, and all of her different media, her whole brand is Choosing Raw. And for a long time, I thought that that meant that she was just a raw foodist. And I think a lot of people have that idea. But really, this book is about how she's choosing to eat raw food, but not exclusively raw food. And she goes into such detail about what this means. I think this is so important because a lot of people are interested in raw foods. And one of our questions today is a perfect example, but don't want to do entirely raw. And I'm one of those people. I love raw foods, but it just has never completely fit for me as a full-on dietary choice. And this book is just so great from that. I also love how you share your story about what brought you to raw food, what brought you to veganism, how you've overcome eating disorders, which is an eating disorder, which is such an important topic. It's very close to my heart and is close to many people's hearts. So many of us, whether or not we recognize as having an eating disorder, so many people, I would be willing to bet almost everybody struggles with their weight, whether they're trying to lose weight, gain weight, maintain weight. It is such an ongoing thing for us. And to be able to address it in the way that you have in this book, Gena, is so phenomenal. And lastly, one of my favorite sections of your book is where you bust a bunch of misconceptions and myths about raw foods, about veganism. You just go so much into detail. I love to highlight my books.
Yay!
I've been highlighting so much. Let's see.
I'm glad. I really liked writing that chapter on myths and misconceptions, so I'm glad that you were into it.
Yes, I was into a lot. Pretty much every page. You even have a great section on the environmental aspects of veganism and how animals are treated, and you summarize it in a way that's not too repetitive. You know, there's so many people talk about this, but you bring all sorts of new light. Plus, you go into nutrition, and you bust a lot of myths there. So I just cannot recommend this enough, and I'm not just saying this because you're on live. But let me hand it over to you. What else do you want to add on to this book?
Well, you covered a lot of it. I'm so glad that all of those things spoke to you. You know, when I was writing this book, I really didn't just want it to be a cookbook, even though my primary goal, both through my blog and through the book, is always to share delicious food, because we eat to live and we live to eat. And I think anyone who's considering making the switch to vegan food needs to be shown that the lifestyle is abundant and delicious and appealing, and that you don't have to make a choice between eating really well and eating in a way that's compassionate and environmentally friendly and healthful. So the food was, of course, like foremost on my mind, but I really also wanted this to be a resource for people. You know, I spent a lot of time writing chapters on nutrition, on the sort of foundations of eating a healthy vegan diet, on the myths and misconception, the kind of myth-busting section. Because what I found when I was getting into veganism and raw foods in particular was just that there were a lot of these sort of pervasive, what I consider to be myths, that, you know, all soy is bad for all people, or that, you know, if you're vegan, then you don't have to worry about how much calcium you eat because our diets are less acidic than everyone else's. And these are things that I actually completely believed when I got into raw foods, because they're presented in a really persuasive way. And I think it took me a really long time to kind of get a handle on the best way to eat a vegan diet that can be healthy and sustainable, not just for a year or a month, but really long term. And so I wanted to give people a resource that would give them just the tools they need to be well-informed, healthy, and to really embrace this lifestyle in a way that goes beyond just, you know, doing it for like a week or 3 weeks or whatever. And then I also really wanted to tell my story, because I think that, you know, when I first got into veganism, I was really hesitant to talk about my eating disorder. And it wasn't because I felt ashamed, but it was more because a lot of people think that veganism is an eating disorder to begin with, which is of course not true, but it's a mainstream attitude. And I didn't want to reflect poorly on veganism. And what I found was actually that by sharing my story, I've connected with a lot of other people who have found healing through plant-based diet. And so I really wanted to present that story in print to the world, more than I do on my blog, because I think that it could inspire a lot of people who are struggling the way I was 10 years ago. And it was important to me to kind of put that out there, along with all of the other stuff, along with all the sort of expert talk as a nutritionist. I really wanted to say, I haven't always had it figured out with food. I've had a really hard time with food, and this is how I got here. So those were my goals.
Well, I definitely think that you achieved them. And I also, of course, we're just jumping over the fact that you have a ton of recipes. I mean, most of the book is recipes in there.
Yeah. 125 of them, in fact.
I mean, it's incredible. You really set people up for success and for in a great position to jump right into it and learn and just start eating healthy and figure out what works best for them. So it's a phenomenal resource overall. And it just makes you a phenomenal person to answer these questions that I want to get to today.
I'm so excited for these questions.
I think we've got some really great ones, and I'm so excited to hear what you have to say about them. I want to start with a few that I think we can address really, really fast, and then we can save plenty of time for the really juicy questions and also give plenty of time to answer everybody else's questions. These Q&A videos always go a little bit longer than planned. Right now we're almost at the half-an-hour mark, and we have a lot to cover, so we might not get to the live questions until like around 2 o'clock-ish. And Gena, I don't know if you have a strict time that you need to.
I don't need to jump off right away or anything like that. So let's just keep going, and if
awesome.
We'll figure it out as we move along.
Cool. All right. Well, let's start with the question that I'm so curious to see what you have to say about. It's from Tara, and Tara asked, "What are your thoughts on nightshade foods like tomatoes, bell peppers, eggplants? I have mixed feelings about eating them, as these foods seem to have both positive and negative health effects. I personally am really curious about this because I've read a lot about nightshades, but I've always felt so confused and on the fence, and I love potatoes and eggplant and tomatoes. Those are like 3 of my favorite vegetables and fruits, and it's heart-wrenching. I don't know. I just eat them. They don't bother me, but what I have learned is something about them. Can they lead to arthritis or different inflammation in the body?"
Yeah. So the issue here is that nightshades contain a compound called solanine, and in certain people, and it's actually a pretty small number of people, it can exacerbate inflammation. So if you are already suffering from osteoarthritis, for example, or any other kind of inflammation-linked condition, it can exacerbate your symptoms. So that's where the whole "if you have arthritis, don't eat nightshades" thing came from. What that tends to ignore is that a lot of people are actually not sensitive to that compound, that solanine compound, at all. And in those cases, what happens when you eliminate nightshades, if you do that without even knowing whether or not you are sensitive to them, is you miss out on these super healthy foods like tomatoes, which are really high in lycopene, which is a cancer-fighting compound, or eggplant, which is also full of really wonderful cancer-fighting antioxidants. It has that deep purple stain, those anthocyanins that are really healthy for the body. And so nightshades are very healthful food. It's just that in a small number of people, they can enhance inflammation. If you are one of those people, you will probably know, if you have arthritis and you notice that your symptoms are stronger after you've eaten a big old thing of tomato sauce or whatever, then it's simply what I say to anyone with any food. If you notice symptoms, if the food is not working for you, then you know your body best and you can choose to stay away. But I don't think that everyone needs to avoid nightshades as a matter of course.
Phew. I'm glad to hear that, and thank you for the concise answer. That really sums it up well. And it's interesting how unclear it has been, so it's just wonderful to hear it so clearly. A similar question, Erin asked, "What are your opinion on sprouts like alfalfa, radish, etc.? I personally love sprouts. I don't eat them that often, but I don't know, they're just not one of my favorite things to eat. But all I know is that they have a chance of, growing bacteria. Is that the main concern there?
The main concern is usually a food safety issue. They can grow bacteria. This is, of course, true of, you can buy spinach or strawberries that would have bacteria in them. It's just that sprouts tend to be, I think because of the way they're grown, they tend to be susceptible to runoff, which is what usually causes these bacterial outbreaks. I think the trick with sprouts is really to have a source that you trust. So here in New York at the Union Square Farmers Market, there is this guy, the Sprout Man, and he has fantastic sprouts, Stuart something. Anyway, I've been passing his booth for like 8 years now, and I've bought sunflower sprouts from him. I've never had a problem. I think he has a lot of integrity. I really trust him. Anything could happen to any farmer, but I think the trick is to really develop a relationship with a farmer at your local farmer's market who you have faith in. The other trick is to grow your own. It's actually really inexpensive to grow sprouts at home. I don't do it because I'm super duper lazy, but like it's truly not a huge investment. I could grow sprouts if I had like a little bit more wherewithal about this. Like you, Whitney, I enjoy them. I find that they can be sometimes a little expensive and not that filling, so I don't tend to buy them all that much. But I do really have a thing for sunflower sprouts. They are, forgive the term, really meaty, and I love that. They're just chewy and they're dense and they're kind of delicious and wonderful, and they're great in like nori rolls or wraps or salads. So I'm a big fan. I would say that if you are interested in sprouts, either buy a sprout tray, buy some seeds, and start doing it at home because the payoff will be great, or just find a source that you know is reliable.
Love that. Yeah, I've actually grown my own sprouts once. Forget what kind they were, but I still have the seeds. All you have to do is get a jar and get them wet, and then kind of like, and I think you just rinse them off if I remember correctly, and then add more water. They can't stay too wet or they can't get too dry. It's like a little balance, but you can put them right in your windowsill, and it's like pennies when you make them yourself. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So I agree, recommend it. And I think for me, actually, one of the main reasons I don't buy sprouts is because at the store they come in so much plastic. And again, you get so many that it's like hard to use them all, and you end up wasting money. So the farmers market is another great solution because you can get smaller amounts. You can bring your own container, and it might even be less expensive. And lastly, another "What are your thoughts on?" question comes from Brianna, who asks, "What are your thoughts on yeast? And do you think it's something we should try to avoid, or do you think it's harmless?" I personally, I'm a huge fan of nutritional yeast, but I know that's in a different category of other types of yeast. I generally will try to avoid some forms of yeast, but I'm also gluten-free, so a lot of the products that I eat don't even have yeast in them. But lastly, I would say that my concern with yeast has also been around things like MSG, which is one place that it can be hidden with certain types of yeast, or it can be another form of yeast that you don't want to get. So those are where I'm skeptical of it, but perhaps you can shed some light on just yeast in general, I guess, mainly in baked goods, not talking about nutritional yeast.
Yeah, nutritional yeast, separate category, vegan food group. We don't need to go there. Life would stop without Nooch. Yeah, baker's yeast. I think it's totally fine. I think it's fine. Of course, if you are gluten intolerant or gluten sensitive, almost anything you find in a store with yeast in it will probably be something that contains gluten. So there's just enough cross-pollination there that I think it's something that's easy to avoid. I don't actually think that yeast is bad for you. You know, the yeast that we consume in a roll of, a loaf of homemade whole wheat sourdough bread is not active yeast that is going to cause yeast overgrowth in the body. That is the claim that's made. I think the science behind that is a little murky, and I haven't really seen anything persuasive in terms of a study or a cohort study saying that there is a direct causal link between yeast in a loaf of bread and sort of like an overall candida problem. So I'm fine with it. As with all things, I think if you're eating too much of anything, it's usually no bueno. So I don't think it's so much that yeast is bad, and I don't think it's so much that bread is the worst thing in the world. I just think it's that if you're eating a ton of refined grains all the time, and it's always sort of yeasted breads or quick breads, that's not the best thing in the world. So, it all comes down to the moderation thing. But I think true elimination would really be either for folks who are having things with gluten, or there is a particular reason why they're sensitive to it, maybe an allergy, an intolerance, or whatever.
Wonderful. All right, well, let's jump right into some of the juicier questions that might be a little bit more long-winded.
Cool.
And two of them are about raw foods.
Okay.
And I know so many people are passionate about raw food. Well, several of them, their raw food message is kind of sprinkled throughout in here. And you're such an amazing resource for this, so I'm thrilled to have you here to answer these. So the first one comes from Rachel. Rachel said, in regards to the 80-10-10 diet, some raw foodists that I've seen on YouTube say they eat 3,000 to 4,000 calories of fruit and vegetables every day and still lose weight. But I cannot understand how this occurs in the body when I've been taught and told continuously that weight loss is a simple calorie in and calorie out ratio that must be adhered to in order to lose weight. So I guess the question here is, how are people that are eating just fruits and vegetables, but so many of them still calorically dense in that sense, losing weight? Is weight loss really attributed to calories, or is it also associated with processed foods? What is going on there? How come people that are eating cooked vegan foods at that amount are struggling to lose weight?
So I have a bunch of thoughts here. I personally, where I stand on weight loss is, yeah, it's mostly calories in, calories out, but it's not 100% calories in, calories out. From a dietetic perspective, if you consistently take in more calories than you expend, you will gain weight. But I think it's important to note that you will have different reactions to the quality of calories that you eat. If you take in 300 calories of something that's incredibly high in refined sugar, it will make your blood sugar spike, and then you will crash. And then you're going to be hungry again really soon after because you're going to be listless and tired and have a sugar headache. And then you're going to want to eat more. And what your body's going to want is something to bring you back up to the sugar high it just came down off of, so it's going to crave more sugar. So that is where the quality of calories you eat starts to influence your other food choices, and over time that can lead to weight gain. It's not so much that it's not a calorie is a calorie is a calorie. It's just that different kinds of calories will have different effects on our bodies, and that will influence our overall food choices. So I don't think it's quite as simple as saying calories in, calories out. I think it's both calories in, calories out, and quality of what we eat and what kind of calories we eat. When it comes to 80-10-10, it's not a diet that from a nutritionist standpoint I endorse at all. I know it works for a lot of folks. I personally don't think it's rich enough in healthy fats and or protein. And that's just, and I think it's also, you really run a risk of being low on a number of like important vital minerals as well. So that's how I feel about it from the standpoint of someone who does nutrition work professionally. I totally respect anyone who thrives on it. I think that's awesome. It's just not something I would recommend to a client. And I think that the claims are a little bit murky. I, too, don't really understand how you could consistently take in 4,000 or 5,000 calories of food and not expend that much energy and not gain weight. So when I hear things like that, I think I'm skeptical. Like I give that a big shrug.
Well, I would say that what I've noticed with the 80-10-10 community is they tend to be really, really active.
Yes.
I know so many of them that are bikers and runners, and I feel like what I'm interested in is, did they start exercising because of 80-10-10, or more likely they were probably like really big hardcore athletes that wanted that constant fuel and that really efficient fuel that fruit and some vegetables give you, and I would be willing to bet that it just kind of complements that lifestyle in a lot of ways. And because they're athletes, they're probably very aware of their body and the amount of weight that they have on their body and looking to get in the best shape possible, and I think that's what attracts a lot of people to the 80-10-10 lifestyle.
I totally agree. And hey, listen, if you're going to be athletic, like, bless you for fueling yourself on fresh fruit and all of these other, and dates and all of these other fruits. I think that's great. I would just say that for your average person, it might be the kind of thing that's just not appropriate for everybody.
All right. Well, thank you for covering that. The next question comes from a wandering vegan, and that person asked, how do you feel about raw till 4? That's the lifestyle I've been doing for the past 2 months and feel really amazing. But I find raw till 4 is more realistic and doable than being fully raw, as I tried 3 months ago to detox. I think that's great. Personally, I I've done that before, and I actually try to do that when I'm conscious of it, because I find it's easier for me to eat raw foods first thing in the day, and I tend to have a lot of my cooked food cravings later in the evening. So I think it's amazing. I don't even know if you necessarily have to abide by the 4 o'clock principle. It's kind of like the vegan till 6, which Mark Bittman has promoted so much, and I don't know why those numbers are there. Maybe at dinner time we have higher cravings. I'm not sure. What is your thought on the raw till 4 movement?
I think my thoughts they're freakishly similar to yours. I mean, first of all, I think it's great. I think any way to embrace raw foods is fine, and I think it's totally up to you. If you just want that to be one smoothie or salad per day, I think that's great. If you want to do raw till 4, I think that's great. I think whatever encourages you to enjoy all of the benefits and all of the beauty of raw food dishes without getting trapped in this dogma of feeling like you have to do it 100% is great. I never found that raw foods were 100% sustainable for me, either in terms of just having a flexible lifestyle where I feel like I can eat out and travel and do the stuff I want to do, or in terms of feeling my best nutritionally. But I love raw food, and so I think however you want to work them into your schedule, that's great. But I also agree that it doesn't have to be as rigid as like setting a particular hour of the day. You know, it does make a lot of sense to do, you know, fruits in the morning, a raw lunch. But I also sometimes wake up really wanting some oatmeal. And so I, you know, rather than ever having looked at my approach to raw food as like there's a particular time of day or a particular meal that I try to make raw, I've always just said I'm going to let my cravings take me where I want to go. And sometimes that's actually like cooked grains in the morning and then like a delicious raw entree for dinner. And of course, sometimes it's a wonderful light morning smoothie and then something really filling and hearty and cooked at night. But I think that you should just listen to your body, and whatever is working for you is good.
I think what you said about listening to your body is so brilliant. And I also want to preface, though, that it's so important to understand what your body is saying. And Gena, your experience is going to be so different than a lot of other people, and it takes a lot of time, because so many people will say, oh, I'm listening to my body and I had a craving for meat, and I'm listening to my body and I had a craving for junk food, so I'm going to go with it. Sometimes that's more the excuse talking than our body's talking and the craving talking, right? So knowing kind of, it's for me a combination of like, what am I feeling, plus like logically thinking, is this the best decision for me right now? I might wake up wanting a donut in the morning, but that doesn't mean that that's really what I should be having. It's more of like a taste bud craving than it is like our body saying that's going to fuel me and feel good. And I'm so glad you said that, because I really believe it's important for people to learn how to get in touch with themselves. On that note, do you have any good tips for people starting to understand the difference between a taste bud craving versus or like an emotional craving versus like an intuitive body nutritional need?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up, because the issue of cravings is very complicated, and you know, there are some folks who treat cravings as though they're sacred, like I wanted it, so I must need it. And like I quit smoking in like 2008, and I still crave cigarettes all the time. Clearly, I don't need them. So not every craving that we have is an indication of something that we need. You know, I also don't need the 4th cup of coffee that I crave sometimes after a day where I've been like downing soy cappuccinos. So I think we do need to recognize when our bodies are just kind of being stubborn and craving things because they're stimulating, craving them for a lot of different reasons. You know, I think take the example of sugar cravings, which a lot of people have at different times of day. I think very often that's our body saying, I'm low energy, I'm tired. I think sometimes it's emotional in nature. Sometimes it's, my mom gave me sweets when I was sad as a child. So to me, at this point in my life, sweets still signify being nurtured when I'm feeling low. And I think that we need to really do that work, Whitney, as you say, of like learning to distinguish what our body is actually craving. You know, bodies crave sugar, and they crave all sorts of things, all sorts of stimulants, all sorts of foods that we're attached to for reasons, and it's not because we actually need them. It's just because that's what bodies do for whatever reason. A lot of the time it's just habit, you know. So if you've gone vegan recently and you find yourself craving meat sometimes, you know, maybe you do need to take a look at your diet and say, where could I squeeze a little more protein in? but maybe it's also just that the honeymoon has worn off. You know, you're like really in this vegan thing, and you kind of have been for a while, and you're missing what was habitual for a really, really long time. It's totally normal, and it's fine. We've all been there, but it's important to say, I think this is really about just me missing some of the features of my old life now that I've made this change, rather than my body has some pernicious hidden deficiency and it's screaming out for this or that. And you can do that work by chatting with a nutritionist, by sitting around doing some food journaling, seeing if you're maybe not eating enough, if there's a time of day where you're not getting enough protein in your meals, and kind of just examining things really analytically, and also looking at your emotions and your cravings, seeing if there are any emotional patterns that pop up when you're craving particular things. It's really just about consciousness, and there's no perfect formula. It's just there's a little work involved. But the work is good because it brings us closer to what our bodies need.
Excellent. Thank you for addressing that. It's so important.
No, you brought it up, and it's such a great topic.
I agree. And that was so eloquently said. We have 3 more questions, and we're probably going to give each of them about a few to 5 minutes because they're very, very juicy, as I like to say. But yeah. I do want to remind people, since it's about 1:45, and we are going to get to your live questions. Again, the best way to ask them is at google.com/+EcoVeganGal. You click on the event name, and then you go into the Q&A app. And you can do this on your computer or a mobile device. Please don't ask questions on YouTube if you're watching there, or if you're just on the event page, you can also like comment there. Please don't ask your questions. We won't be able to see them. But you can ask your questions starting right now if you'd like, and they go into a little queue. We have a few there right now, so if you want to add into it, we'll get to it as soon as we're done with these last 3 questions, and we cannot wait to hear what you have to say. And you can also just comment on things. You can use the Q&A app to kind of chat with us if you have any other feedback or anything else to add upon. All right, so the next question comes from Jamie, and this is actually a really good spin-off of what we were just talking about, or follow-up, I should say. And Jamie asked, when I first became vegan, I was actually a raw vegan. I felt amazing like anticipating, but I really missed the act of cooking and baking things. Well, since I've converted back over to cooking, I find that my body doesn't respond well if I eat anything processed at all. It's not really an option for me to have yummy vegan frozen entrees or vegan chocolate, anything like that. I realize that processed foods aren't really good for you to begin with, but it does suck that I can't enjoy them every once in a while without my body responding in a negative way. I'll get stomach aches, bad gas, and I'll gain a few pounds just from eating a bunch of vegan chocolate-covered pretzels, for example. I love my fruits and vegetables, but I don't want to be full-on raw vegan. I feel like a terrible vegan. I'll just quickly say that absolutely, most processed foods are not really that good for us, even if they are organic or vegan, and vegan, I should say. But I would also, the one thing that I'm curious about, and of course we're not doing like a full-on nutritional consult, so neither Gena or I would be able to know exactly what's going on with this particular person, but I would wonder if the chocolate-covered pretzels could be a red flag. I personally was super sensitive to gluten and had no idea for most of my life, actually, until I just, on a whim, decided to try taking it out of my diet, and my body responded enormously to it. And I have a lot of food sensitivities. I also have food sensitive to soy. I was eating soy for years and years and having bloating and gas and stomach aches and all of that stuff, and I just had to figure it out for myself by taking it out of my diet. I'm still able to eat some processed foods, not many because of all my sensitivities, but I'll still have a bag of certain types of chips, like potato chips I can eat. They're not great for me, but I can eat those, whereas I can't eat corn chips or gluten chips. So I would say that to Jamie, I would look into see if that's a food sensitivity issue as opposed to a processed foods issue. What do you think, Gena?
I think that is one really good intuition, and it would definitely be something to experiment with. I think it could be, you know, when we really drastically change our diets, our bodies are very responsive. You know, our bodies respond quickly to dietary change, and your digestive system is brilliant and smart, and it will stop producing. When you change your diet, the enzymes that your body produces immediately responds to the changes you've made. So if you haven't eaten something in a really long while, this is why people who haven't eaten dairy or meat in a really long time and then they reintroduce it tend to feel kind of sick to their stomachs, or a lot of the time people have that experience. It's because your body has just started making less of those enzymes that it needs to digest those foods. So, you know, our bodies are very sensitive, and when you cut out a lot of processed foods and you go raw for a long period of time, or even just for a month or something, your body is going to just change. Your digestive system is going to adjust to the change you've made, and so it can be a shock if you reintroduce stuff. I would say that there is no reason for you to feel like you need to live a life where you're never allowed to eat processed food again. I think that if you're having GI symptoms, it could either just be you're not used to the processed foods you're eating, and because you haven't had them in a while, you might be eating a lot in one sitting. And frankly, eating a ton of something you haven't eaten in a couple of months in one sitting, it wouldn't even matter if that were a healthy food. You would probably have some sort of response to it. And that's just about the fact that it's foreign. It's not so much that you're eating something that's poisonous for you and you're never going to be able to eat it again. It might just be, this is something that because I don't eat a lot, I have to make sure to eat it in moderation kind of situation. And I would say that, you know, the trick might be to start finding processed foods that are in that sweet spot in between being really sort of more junk foody, not a term I like, but a term I'll use, and being just not any processed food at all. I really like a lot of brands these days. There's the brand Hilary's Eat Well, which makes these wonderful. I think you and I ate them at Expo East together, Whitney. I think we were doing samples together. You know, wonderful veggie burgers that are like beans and hemp and greens, and they're really not full of fillers. There's neat meat, which you can make awesome tacos with, and it's like nut and legumes. The great news about being vegan right now is that so many of the more convenience food products out there are starting to be made with more wholesome, whole food ingredients. And so I feel like you don't necessarily have to feel like you're stuck in between a Boca burger and being a raw foodist. There might just be more brands that you need to find in this sweet spot in between. And that might make your life easier. It might make you feel like you have a little more freedom. And it'll also keep your GI system feeling its best because the foods are still pretty healthy.
Absolutely. And I do want to add, too, that I've found wonders through the help of digestive enzymes, really high-quality digestive enzymes. When I want to eat certain foods that I know I'm sensitive to, I'll have some digestive enzymes, and I'll be able to process things like soy a lot easier. And sure. I also have really become passionate about probiotics. So I take probiotic capsules, the high quality, and I also look for probiotic-rich foods like all sorts of fermented beverages, tempeh, kombucha falls into the beverage category. Right now I'm really into a probiotic enhanced coconut water from Good Belly. That's
yum.
Have you had that? Because it's
I haven't. I want it. You said it, and I was like, ooh, tell me more.
It is so good. It is like coconut water meets yogurt, but it still tastes, it looks like coconut water, but it tastes like yogurt, I should say. It's phenomenal. And there's even probiotic chocolates. In a past video with Jason Robel, we talked about this great brand called Sunbiotics and this is actually a perfect combination for someone like Jamie who wants the processed foods, or in this case, I would just say packaged foods, right? Yeah, this one company, Sunbiotics, is awesome because they're packaged, but they're raw, and they're enhanced with probiotics, yet they still taste like a treat. They make things like chocolate bars that are raw, organic, but with probiotics. They also make amazing almond snacks, and they have all these different flavors, so they kind of taste like a junk food-ish type of packaged food, but they're not at all. And I think Gena made this great point of a lot of companies are catching on to this trend where you can make food taste like junk food, but it's actually really healthy for you. It kind of like fools your taste buds, but not your body. So look for products like that. Kale chips are another great thing. Man, kale chips are like the best, right? They're very expensive and or time-consuming to make, but man, do they hit the spot when you're looking for like a crunchy, product experience with lots of flavor. So I say just keep looking and don't judge yourself too harshly.
Yeah.
But probiotics and digestive enzymes are definitely worth experimenting with. Just always try to go with the high quality. Don't skip out on trying to buy the low-cost stuff. If your body's going through something, go for the high-end stuff and see how your body reacts to it, and maybe consult with a doctor to make sure you're getting the right kind. All right, 2 more questions, and they both are very similar to one another and also very sensitive questions that are very dear to my heart and to Gena's, as this is something that we've both gone through. Gena and I share a past experience, as unfortunately do many women and also some men, of having a history of an eating disorder. And I am so passionate about this subject matter because it actually, and also I believe, Jen, I don't want to speak for you, but based on what I've read, it's helped us a lot within our recovery to learn about eating nutritious foods. And I think that we both share this experience of having, well, for me, I'll speak for myself and then I'll allow you to speak on it, Gena. For me, when I had my eating disorder, which wasn't quite full-blown but was enough for me to identify with it, when I look back, I felt out of control with my body, and I also didn't understand foods. And learning about veganism and then later organic foods and plant-based foods and gluten and soy-free and the types of foods that work best for my body was one of the best gifts that I've ever received in life and brought into my own life, and it's helped me so much with my healing. I think that when you have an eating disorder, it might not ever go away completely. There's still a lot of those same thoughts in my head that I had 15 years ago when I was in that position. But through understanding what foods work best for my body and what foods are most nutritious and are acting as fuel for my body, that has just been the most healing thing for me. And also learning how to shift my emotional state has also been a big thing. So these are the reasons you'll see me talk a lot about this in my work, because as I can tell with these 2 questions I'm about to read, they are, women in very similar positions. And if any of you out there are watching and you can relate to those or you have more questions, please never hesitate to reach out to me or to Gena, because we've been there and we've overcome it, and we're always gathering more information about this, and we want to be a support system for you. Never feel like that you're alone. I wish I had a YouTube channel to watch 15 years ago when I was going through this. I feel like that would have helped me so much. And so you are so fortunate to have these online resources now, so please use them. Gena, do you want to say anything else before I jump into the questions?
No, well, I mean, you said it best, especially the part about finding community. When I was anorexic, I, like so many people with eating disorders, was so isolated from the world, from my friends, from my family. My life was so solitary, and I often wonder what would have happened if I had found, especially veganism, but also just a sense of like-minded community, a sense that there was a safe space where I could talk about this stuff. I have no idea how my life would have been different if I had found it sooner. There's actually a series on my blog called Green Recovery where people who have had disordered eating or eating disorders share their stories about how their recovery intersected with eating a plant-based diet. And it's been this like really powerful, wonderful thing on my blog. And the thing that I like most is that so many people comment saying, I've never talked about this until now, or I've never told anyone this, but now I feel like I can share. I feel like there's a safe space. So check out that series on my blog if you're not necessarily ready to talk about it, but you just want to read about it and feel that there are other people out there going through what you went through. And totally email me, leave comments, do whatever you need to do to feel like you're not alone, because you're not alone. And that's the most important thing.
Thank you so much. Okay, just so you know, I'm going to go grab some water in a moment. So if you see me disappear from the screen, that's why I need to get some water in my body. But let's start with the first question here. I'm going to leave out the name. They didn't ask me to, but just in case, I want to make sure that their privacy is protected here. As a person who struggles with bulimia and is also vegan, I have noticed there's a lot of ED, eating disorder sufferers, in the plant-based community. Why do you think this is? How do you cope with people / friends / family who think your veganism is part of your ED? Are there any resources on ED recovery within a vegan diet, or do you think veganism can be harmful for some ED sufferers. I think Gena, having addressed this so much through her work, is going to be a great person to answer this. I'll real quick say, I don't know if I would say there are a lot of sufferers. I think there are just a lot of sufferers in general, and maybe more come out of the woodwork because we talk about food and our bodies so much. Maybe it just seems like there are more people in the vegan community, but it's really just there's maybe a more open conversation than there is outside of the vegan community. That would be my guess. And as in terms of coping with people who think that your veganism is part of your eating disorder, I've been there. Gena, I bet you've been there too. I've had over the years people concerned, especially because I have food sensitivities. When I stopped eating gluten and soy, I had a drastic weight loss, and people were concerned. And I've also experimented with the 80-10-10 diet that also resulted in a lot of weight loss. Never that much. If any of you watch my YouTube channel, you've seen what I've looked like. I don't think I've ever looked ultra skinny. But when people are around you that are close to you, see you losing a lot of weight fast, they're going to wonder. For me, I just really had to, prove it over time. Sometimes it's like you got to take the time. It's just going to take a few weeks or a few months or maybe a year to show that your weight isn't going to continue dropping. It's kind of just getting to the place where it needs to be. But B, explaining why I was eating the way that I was eating. I do get uncomfortable sometimes when I talk about all the foods I don't eat, because I feel like people judge me on that. But I also know that that's best for my lifestyle. Trying to just eat everything just doesn't work for me emotionally or physically. And so the way that I eat now feels best to me. And that's really all I can say, and just assure people that I'm really doing the best that I can and learning along the way. And hope that they can understand that. I don't believe that veganism can be harmful for eating disorder sufferers unless they're super, super restrictive. I think Gena and I both experienced how it's actually helped us, as we've already said. And but anything can be, anytime that you have restrictions, it, of course, could trigger something within people. And this is something Gena's talked about. You did a really great panel at Vita Vegan Con that I remember a couple years ago where you were talking about kind of these trigger words for people. And I would say when it comes to triggers, it's so tough because everybody gets triggered by something. And if we censor ourselves too much, it's really challenging. One thing that I try to do, though, to be mindful is try not to use the word restriction too much and try not to focus too much on what I'm not eating. Spend more time talking about what I do eat, and that will often help kind of push people away. If you give long lists and you talk about foods that you're eating on a regular basis, I feel like that's a much more positive spin on it all. Yeah. And I'll leave it to Gena. So, Gena, again, the questions are, do you think that there are a lot of eating disorder sufferers in the vegan community? Why do you think that is? How do you cope with people who think it's part of your eating disorder? And do you think it can be veganism can be harmful to eating disorder, people that have disordered eating?
So my honest answer is that I think it could be. I think any way of eating in the hands of someone whose intention is to be restrictive and lose weight when it's not necessary could be not a great thing. And I have seen some folks who, from my perspective as someone who's had a serious eating disorder and who is a nutritionist, I thought, I don't think veganism is for you right now because I think that you are approaching it with unhealthy intentions, with intentions that are harmful to the self. I have to be honest about that. As much as I would love to stand here and say, I think everyone in the world should be vegan right now, today, the truth is that some people are at a place in their recovery where any kind of, in their recovery or a place in their eating disorder, where any kind of diet that's selective, which is the word I like to use instead of restrictive, where any kind of diet that's selective is going to just not be right. And to those people, I always say, it's not that you can't ever be vegan. It's that you need to focus on recovery right now, and you need to eat whatever you need to eat to recover and get to a place where your mindset is healthy. And then why don't you think about veganism later on? Because veganism is not going anywhere. Veganism is going to be around for the long haul, which means that whatever you're at a place in your life where you feel like you can have a really synergistic and wonderful relationship with a vegan diet, you can go there. But maybe when you're in the depths of your anorexia or bulimia recovery, it's not the time for you to be vegan. That's okay. That's okay. Because the truth of the matter is that it's better for you to take care of yourself in the short term and to be healthy and to explore veganism where you can really stick with it and love it and embrace it and be happy and be a happy, healthy advocate than for you to try it, have a bad experience because it's triggering or bringing up a lot of the issues that intersect with your eating disorder, and then kind of end up rebelling against it or sort of being resentful of it for those reasons. As far as incidents of disordered eating in the vegan community, I have seen a lot of it, enough that I would say there might be more incidents in the vegan community, although I do also see Whitney's point that I just think so many people have eating disorders, and maybe in the vegan community we spend so much time talking about food that we're just way more open. I think that's totally possible. Either way, what I know, and this is the thing that makes me so excited, is that I know so many women and men who have had lasting recoveries because they discovered plant-based food. For me, it was a combination of both what Whitney mentioned, which is just learning how to take care of my body with food rather than punishing it with restriction. And that was really powerful, learning that food could be this beautiful thing that enhanced my health rather than this kind of guilty, terrible thing. And the thing that was most powerful for me was really becoming more compassionate toward animals. Because, again, when I was in the throes of my disorder, my life was very isolated, and I really only thought about myself. And I didn't really think that much about the world around me because it was really all just me. Like, will this make me gain weight? Is this too many calories? All of my thoughts about food were so self-centric. And when I went vegan, I learned that our food choices can actually be an avenue to do good in the world. They can help us protect the environment. They can help us exercise more compassion to our animal neighbors. They can help us make food choices that are better for the planet and for other human beings. And so that realization, the realization that food could be this way for me to do good, was actually what pulled me out of all of my fears of food, all of my hatred of food, my discomfort with food, my isolation. And that really is what has given me the tools to recover. Hold on, that's my front door. 1 second. I don't know why someone's buzzing.
That happens from time to time. And I'll take this as an opportunity to mention that we have one last question that we're prepared to answer, and then we're going to jump into the live questions. So please get those in at google.com/+EcoVeganGal. Remember to ask it in the Q&A app, not just the event page. But you do need to click on the event within the Eco Vegan Gal Google Plus page, and then open up the Q&A app wherever that is on your screen or mobile device, and that's where you can ask your question. And we cannot see questions that are just on the page or are on YouTube. You can start to ask your questions now. They're going to go into a queue, and then we're going to get to them after we finish this question and the last one. Awesome. Did you have anything else? Do you want to continue with that one, or do you want to move on to the last one?
I think I said most of what I wanted to say, just that I think it's important to remember that veganism can really be a healing tool. I'm not saying it's the healing tool for anyone. I know a lot of women who I met when I was in recovery, and some of them have said to me, and these are women who are really conscious of food and their relationship with food, and they've just said, as someone with my history, I can never again say, that's not a food I can eat. And I respect that. I respect that that's the way they feel. I think that's an okay way to feel. It's just not my experience. My experience was that actually making selective choices has been helpful. Okay. 1 second. I'm going to mute myself while I do this. I'll be right there.
No problem at all. I think that everything that she just said is so powerful, and I hope that those of you who have been struggling with this, or if you know anyone else who has been, I really encourage you to, you can send them to this, you can send them to Gena's website as well, and any other resources that you can find, but just simply being a support system for people. If you're not going through it yourself, check in with your friends. You never know who might be going through something and might not be comfortable talking about it until it's brought up in the right way. So, just, and learning also about what words to use and if they trigger anyone else, and how to talk about your foods in a way that's not always about losing weight, I've spent a lot of time talking about the benefits of veganism on weight loss, and I've since become a little bit changed my phrasing about it, because I recognize that I don't want veganism to always seem about weight loss. I want it to be seen about healing, and healing the planet, healing your body, healing your mind, and all the other amazing things that eating a whole foods plant-based diet can bring to us. To me, the word healing can encompass so many different things,
Yeah.
and to me that can also fall into weight loss in a way. If your body is gaining weight because it's in an unhealthy spot, that's where I would say it might be a form of healing for your body to be changing your diet. But also we have to remember that not every body is created differently, and not every diet is going to result in weight loss or weight gain or healing you. As she said, it's really coming down to what works best for you and exploring that and understanding that as best you can. So for sake of time, let's jump into the last question before we get into the live. And this one is kind of putting an end cap on this eating disorder, but also perhaps one of the more sensitive questions that we have here, and thus the person who wrote it wanted to remain anonymous. So this person said that I am currently struggling with a relapse in an eating disorder behavior. I've struggled with anorexia and eating issues off and on since high school and was hospitalized before attending college. My family stated that if I did not get better and take care of myself, I would not go to college. So I felt rushed into getting better in order to prove to them that I was okay. Now I am done with college and in my mid-20s, and I recently moved away from my family and friends to start my career. Now that I'm alone, I find that this has been a huge trigger for my eating problems, and the only person who can keep me accountable is myself, which apparently I'm failing at. I have lost weight and restrict my calories, usually to under 500 calories, and sometimes work out 2 or more hours a day. Do you have any advice on what options I have for treatment or even beginning to fully embrace recovery? At this point in my life, I sometimes feel hopeless and that my eating issues will just constantly be in my life. And when I envision that as my future, it brings me down tremendously. There are times I think I really need help, and other times I think the change will be far too difficult.
Well, do
you, Gena?
Yeah. First thing I think you should do, seek out a therapist in your area who deals with disordered eating. I would do that as soon as you possibly can. You can find therapists with eating disorder specialties on the National Eating Disorder Association website, NEDA.org. And I think that should definitely be your first order of business, because a therapist will be able to do a lot of things. A, create a safe space where you can talk about this. B, help you stay accountable, encourage you to get closer towards recovery. C, they will be able to tell you if there is, hang on one second.
And by the way, go ahead.
I was going to say, a therapist will be able to tell you if you are in a position where things are far gone enough that you should consider inpatient options or outpatient options at an eating disorder like facility or clinic. So that's the first thing that you should definitely do. Beyond that, if you're in a place where you're losing weight and you're restricting, but things haven't yet slided into like major health failure, you can seek out the help of a nutritionist. You can seek out the help of someone like a registered dietitian who can help you kind of get the food stuff together and help you increase your calories. But I think that no matter what, the psychological component has to come first, because that's the core of eating disorder recovery. So that should be your first step. And if you want any more information about this from someone who's been through it, from someone who is a practicing nutritionist, please feel free to email me, Gena@choosingraw.com. But I would say that it sounds like you're in a place where you're a little bit isolated and you need to find some community and find some support system for yourself. It doesn't have to be your family if that's fraught for you or if that's complicated, but I think you do need to say, I'm in a place where I need to ask people for a little bit of help right now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for addressing that. I'm sure the person who asked it and other people who are not comfortable asking will feel really supported there. And again, just a reminder that you always have me and Gena there to reach out. Even if sometimes you just need to talk about something, we are here for you, and we would be happy to connect you with more people that can be there for you and other resources. Okay, well, we're going to jump into the live questions finally. We'll spend a maximum of 15 minutes on that. And we just have 2 so far, so if anybody else has questions that they've been holding off on, go ahead and put them out. Google.com/+EcoVeganGal. Click on the event page. It says Live Q&A with Gena, and click on the Q&A section. If for some reason you're having trouble, I will send any questions to Gena. Maybe she can answer them separately to social media or email, or perhaps she can come on again if you guys want Gena on again, and she wants to come on again. We can make that happen. All right. Let's jump into the 2. They're both actually from the same person, from Caitlin. And Caitlin said, I'm 22 and have had premature gray hair since I was 18. I have naturally dark hair and constantly dye it. I'm concerned about the chemicals that I'm putting on myself and into the environment, as well as packaging. Are there any eco and safe alternatives? Absolutely, Caitlin. There are. There are a bunch of different options for you. Number 1 would be henna. Henna is like one of the most natural things you can do for your hair, and you can get that at almost any natural market or online. Online would probably be the best way, unless you want to go look at the packaging and options at the store. Online, you're probably going to save a ton of money and get a lot more options. Also, in almost any natural market, including Whole Foods, there's usually a pretty big selection of natural or mostly natural products that you can choose from. So I would say make a trip to Whole Foods or a co-op. Trader Joe's I don't think has hair products like that, but any sort of small natural market or market similar to Whole Foods will probably have it for you to browse through. Even places like Target, I'm not positive, but maybe they have some natural. And you can always look and then go price shop online and find one that's great for you. And I'm so glad that you asked. Gena, do you have any experience with this? Do you ever dye your hair?
None at all. I'm sure I will at some point because my mother went gray when she was not too young. So it'll happen. My boyfriend found a green hair the other day too, and I was like, just the first. No, you know, I don't think it's a big deal. I think that there are tons of options. Whitney knows much more about natural beauty and like personal care than I do, so I'm really glad you answered that one.
Yeah, I haven't dyed my hair in years and years. I used to, but then I started realizing that it wasn't good for me, and it also is frustrating having roots and having to re-dye it all the time. But you can also find natural salons that will dye your hair naturally. Or you could even see if your hairdresser will let you buy a product and bring it in, and they can apply it for you, and you can have a whole conversation about this. So I would definitely look into your different options and make it happen. I'm so glad that you asked. I wish more people would do that. I know so many people who live a natural lifestyle and still use, you know, chemicals like that in their hair or beauty products, and it's like, what do we need to do to keep educating people on it? But yeah, you can find non-toxic options to pretty much anything these days, and we're so lucky, and having all these products online is such a joy. All right, so we'll move on to Caitlin's second question, and again, get your questions, and you guys are especially quiet today. Usually I have like a barrage of questions, but maybe we answered them all. Who knows? Okay, and Caitlin's second question is, I transferred colleges this year and I'm on a sports team. At my last school, my teammates and my coach always commented on my food in a mean way. I'm scared my new team will act the same way. How do I let them know I'm vegan and it's not okay to judge me? Caitlin, from my point, I've addressed this a few times in Q&As and in specific videos over the years. So if I'll link to those in the description field of this video for you to check out later on. So I would love to turn it over to Gena to hear what she has to say.
I think this is a great topic. I think that this is a topic that's actually like, it's so broad, because if it's not a sports team, I think everyone's had a position where maybe friends at school were making comments or family members were making comments. I think we've all been there where we felt like our lifestyle was being judged totally unnecessarily. I think there are a lot of ways you could treat this. You know, some people would just rather not talk about it, and the best thing to do is say, I would rather not discuss my food choices because they're private. And I think that you need to recognize that it's okay to say that. Food choices are private. And it's totally fine for you to say, this is personal and private for me, I'd rather not talk about it. But what I found to be the most powerful tool in my own life when people were making comments was actually to find my voice and to start dialogues about it and to get much more comfortable saying, well, you know, I'm vegan for a lot of reasons. Here are what some of them are. It's what works for me. And because it works for me and it's what makes me happy, it would mean a lot to me if you didn't make me feel as though you're judging my choices. And you don't have to say it exactly like that. I mean, everything is contextual and there's no one answer for all people. But I do feel like if you're going to be vegan and you're going to, you know, continue living the lifestyle day in and day out, you will confront this. And so it is important to sort of find your voice as someone who eats the way you do and be able to say to folks, this is what works and it's what makes me feel good. I think emphasizing that it is what makes you feel good and it's what brings joy to your life is actually super important, because what I used to do when I first went vegan was I would sort of like get very defensive and I would like rattle off health facts, or I would get on the defensive posture and then I would put down other ways of eating to make it sound like mine was better. And what I realized was that that was not the way to go, because it makes other people feel defensive in return, and it creates this very sort of like hostile encounter. What has been so amazing is just what I realized is that if I just say something like, this makes me feel great and it makes me really happy, there's nothing anyone can say to that. What is someone going to say to, I feel great and I'm really happy? Nothing. Like, you will look like such a jerk if you try to disagree with that. So I really think emphasizing all of the happiness and all of the health benefits that veganism has brought to your personal life is the best way to go, because it's something that it's really tough to argue with that. And it also is a very loving and non-confrontational way of defending yourself.
Fantastic. Couldn't have said it better myself. We share that perspective on so many levels.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that I think it's always an important conversation to have. And like I said, that question comes up constantly, and it's so sad because so many people deal with judgment. I mean, I deal with it on a daily basis because of all the work that I do online, and it's sometimes still hard for me. You know, people can be really mean. I feel like the biggest thing that I've learned, and this applies to pretty much anything, is to just try not to take it personally. Yeah. Usually, what somebody says more about them than it does about you. And if somebody is being unkind to you, who knows why they're saying it? They might be jealous, they might be frustrated, they might be angry about something else that happened, they might just be a frustrated or angry person in general, they might, have a crush on you, and I'm just kidding. That's like preschool stuff, but you never know. People deal with their emotions and feelings and thoughts and also in all sorts of crazy ways. So yeah, being too affected by what other people say, as hard as it is not the most productive thing. The most productive thing I find is to feel confident and secure with your own decisions and how you feel, because that's ultimately all that matters. And people can come and go and make all these passing comments all the time, but most people are just not important. It's harder when it's people that you're really close to and you see all the time, like in her case, if it's someone on a team, or especially if it's a family member or friend. Yeah. But even so, I would say the same thing applies to them. Some people are just not that great at communicating their thoughts and feelings, and they might believe something and be in the mindset that their beliefs are right and yours are wrong, and a lot of people operate under that mindset, but again, it's just not true. Like, we can't say that about anything. We live in a very gray world where we don't have black and white rights or wrongs about pretty much anything in our life. There's very few things in our life that are fully factual, in my opinion, and people will argue about anything. I'll leave you with this really great quote that I've been thinking a lot about. I saw it online. It said, "You could be the juiciest peach in the world, and you will still meet people that hate peaches." And it's so true. It's like, you can be doing your best and thinking that you're doing your best and what you're doing is right, but there's in almost every case going to be someone that just completely disagrees with you and there's nothing you can do to change their mind, and it's not necessary to change their mind. You just keep being you and doing what feels best to you and learning about it and growing as a person, and I feel like that's the best you can do.
Yeah, to that I would add, there's that expression like everyone is fighting his or her own great battle. And I always remember that because all the times in my life as someone who's online and, in the public eye sometimes is that typically when people have lashed out at me for any reason, it has become clear in the way they did it that they were hurting in some way, whether that's feeling insecure, judged, defensive, anything. And I always do remember that line about us each fighting our own battle because it's so easy to get upset when people are unkind to you or you feel like they're judging you and just get really mad and want to fight about it. But if someone is judging your choices, they're usually struggling with something of their own. Who knows what that is? And again, being vegan, the core of the lifestyle is compassion. So as hard as it is in those moments, just come back to that compassion piece and just think, hey, we are all dealing with our own shit, forgive my French, and I'm just kind of going to keep doing what I do, and I'm going to forgive this person for having made me feel judged, period. Whitney, you know what? I can't hear you right now. You must be muted. There you go.
Sorry. I had myself on mute that whole time.
Great. I have to hear the question.
Sorry. All I said there was that coming from a place of love has been where I've best handled those situations. And when I've just given love back to someone even when they haven't given love to me, that's how I'm easily able to recover the fastest and to deal with the situation the fastest, because most people just react out of anger. And so if you can just, even if it's something that someone writes you, on social media, sometimes it's not always in person, or sometimes it's a rumor that you heard so and so said this about you. It's like, breathe it in, take that moment and say, I'm going to choose to experience this with love instead of with further anger, and just remind yourself that to extend compassion to that person even if they're not extending it to you. That, to me, has helped me deal with those situations on a much better level. I usually can leave those situations feeling better. Doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt, but it's usually easier to deal with when you come from that point. Okay, so we have one last question here, and I love this one because this is a great note to end on here and a constant question, and then we're going to wrap things up. So this last question comes from Eric. Hi, Eric. I know who you are. It's nice to hear from you. He said, for the past few days, I've been on the 80-10-10 raw till 4 diet after being vegan for 5+ years. It's been going very well, but you both seem to have some issues with it. What should I be on the lookout for while trying the diet? I will real quick say that I have done 80-10-10. I've read the book. I follow it. I'm very fascinated by it. I guess for me, I've wanted to do it a lot, but for some reason, I don't know. I naturally just keep navigating back towards whole cooked foods, as well as some raw foods. But I've also had my hesitations because almost everybody that I talk to that's not 80-10-10 has a hesitation, and I say this from professional people I talk to. So I've talked to dietitians, to nutritionists, to doctors, to experienced friends, and there is a lot of hesitation from those people. And I don't think it's necessarily like a judgment that just because they're not doing it means that, you know, like to say that because somebody is not 80-10-10, they don't understand it and they don't agree with it. I really feel like a lot of these people are very educated, and as Gena already covered before, just kind of seem to feel like that it's not giving you everything that you need and you might be missing out on some things. I think that beneficially it can be great because it's like flooding your body with high quality fuel all the time and so many vitamins and minerals, but it seems to me to not feel entirely balanced, and that's where my hesitation has been with it.
Yep. I don't think the science is there. And that's not, there is no, I say this with respect, you know what I mean? Like, we all interpret science differently, but I don't see the science behind the diet. I've read the book too. I didn't see the science there. I didn't feel like it drew upon enough robust, accumulated, evidence-based material. And I think that when it comes to nutrition, look, if you are looking to prove anything in the realm of nutrition, literally any claim you could ever want, you will find a study or even a couple of studies to support your opinion. That's how nutrition science works. There is a study to prove literally anything. I think the way we determine what the best diet for most people is, and I never say all people because I don't think there is one best diet for everyone, which is part of my issue with 80-10-10. I think it really is presented as like the natural human diet, and I don't think there is such a thing. But I think the way we make determinations about what is probably the best way to eat for most people out there is to look at an accumulated, robust body of evidence. And by this I mean study after study after study, year after year after year. What does almost all of the evidence we have support? What does the majority of evidence say? And that evidence supports a diet that gets more than 10% of calories from fat. It really, in the nutrition world, the Mediterranean diet still, I think, has the most weight of evidence behind it. It has the most accumulated studies. It has the most robust evidence behind it. And that's a diet that is just richer in protein and healthy fats, polyunsaturated fats, than what 80-10-10 would support.
Did you know that Juliana Hever is coming out with a book about how to do the Mediterranean diet on a vegan diet? And also, if I remember correctly, it's either low in oil or no oil, but she's taking that Mediterranean diet and all the research and putting a different spin on it, which I'm so excited for.
That is so unbelievably cool. I think that's like the greatest ever. And I mean, I am a big fan of oil, but I think, one thing you tend to hear in sort of 80-10-10 circles is that all fat has to be like crappy oil fat, and that's not true either. I mean, there are just so many ways to get, whether you're someone who eats olive oil or other oils or not, there's still so many sources of fat, and I think most people tend to do quite well with a bit more of it than 80-10-10 makes space for. So that's my personal feeling. However, my opinion about all ways of eating, whether it's 80-10-10, raw food, macrobiotic, I mean, all of these different sort of food paradigms, is that you can take what works for you, but you don't necessarily have to like go all the way with any of them. If you feel like 80-10-10 is giving you a lot of wonderful energy from fresh fruit, if you feel like it's a hydrating diet and that's been doing wonders for your skin and your health and your energy, take that away from it. But you don't necessarily have to feel like you have to abide by it by the letter. And I think that's why the fact that you're doing it till 4, Eric, is actually really awesome, because it means that you're probably taking the stuff that's working from you, but you're not feeling as though you have to obey it like it's a religion. And I think that that's really great. I kind of have learned to do that with the raw food thing in my own life. Like, I've taken a lot away from raw food. It's influenced the way I cook. It makes me feel great. It's a huge part of my lifestyle. But for me, sort of following the dogma was just never going to work, and so I haven't done it. And I've taken what works for me from raw food, and I've kind of left behind what doesn't work for my body. And I think that that's the way you can look at so many different sort of diets that are out there, plant-based, within the plant-based world. And I would say just, you don't need to feel as though anyone here is trying to discourage you if 80-10-10 is working. All I would say is that to do it in a way that feels sustainable, and it sounds like you found that way already. So.
Awesome answer. I love hearing that. I'm always trying to learn more about 80-10-10 because I have so many friends that do 80-10-10, and it's all over YouTube, and I'm fully ingrained in the vegan YouTube community, and it's so fascinating to me. I want to learn more. I think we have a lot to learn about 80-10-10, and I think that it is right now a big social trend. It's a very trendy thing to do, and that's where I feel like there's a little bit of a danger zone, right? Because people might be choosing it for the wrong reasons. So I would say with Gena is like, make sure you do your research. Go beyond the typical resources for it. Don't just read the 80-10-10 book. Don't just watch the popular 80-10-10 channels. Yeah. See what else you can learn. And if you can learn from people like Gena who are studying outside of it, and see if you still want to do 80-10-10, her advice is phenomenal. Try to pull out all of the benefits of it and figure out how you can shape it and maybe redefine it for yourself if that's what you want to do. And I absolutely agree. I think even just the name 80-10-10 makes it so strict. You got to have 80% this, 10% that, 10% this, and it's like feels so rigid. But if you have your flexibility with it, and maybe call yourself a fruitarian if you want, or the raw till 4, or fruitarian till 4, whatever you want to call yourself, but maybe just not as strict. I feel like that's probably a beautiful way to do it, and it's inspiring. That mindset appeals to me so much because I'm also that type of all or nothing type of a person typically, and that's why I love Gena. I love her philosophy of, you know, choosing raw, right, but not being 100% raw. And knowing that it doesn't really matter if it falls into a category or not. It's really all about what works best for you, and that's true with everything when it comes to food that we eat. So thank you for asking that, Eric, and thank you for answering it so well. We are going to wrap things up. Unfortunately, all of these Q&As with guests are just amazing, and I could talk for hours and hours, but I know everybody has busy lives that they have to get back to, or productive lives and fascinating lives. So again, you can find more information about Gena in 2 great ways. One is through her website, choosingraw.com, where she has a newsletter you can sign up for, and all links to the social media platforms, which are an amazing way to engage with her and her community. Plus, she has that fantastic book that I showed you earlier that you can go out and get, and I'll have a link to that down below. And same thing goes with me. If you want more information, if you want to connect with me, just go to ecovegangal.com, and all the links to social media and my newsletter are there, and other ways that you can get in touch and find more information. And I want to reiterate again that we are both here for you, to support you. Never hesitate to email us, to reach out on social media, and just dig in and get all the information you can. I feel like the more you can learn about something, the more that you can build a community around it, the more supported and the higher chance of success that you're going to have. We have one last question.
Oh, this is actually where I really do need to jump off.
Yeah, I know. I think I have to go too. I'm sorry, Debbie. We have to cut things off. But if you want to submit that question, either you can email it to Gena, or you can put it in the Q&A form so that I can address it another time. If you go to bit.ly, so bit.ly/ I think it's EVG Weekly QA. That's my regular form. You can submit this, and I promise I will get to it at some point. Thanks again to Gena for being here, and everybody else for watching live and the recordings. We so appreciate you. We're so glad that you're here absorbing information that says so much about you and your passion and how you're setting yourself up for success. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It was such a joy to be here.
Awesome. Well, I think I can speak for everyone saying it was a massive joy to have you, and I bet you people are going to be just extra thrilled when they get their hands on this beautiful book that you've written. So thank you for all that you do, and keep an eye out. She is everywhere now. You are working with Chris Carr on amazing projects, and she has all these different interviews with amazing people. You're just getting the word out in so many great ways. So take advantage of this time where Gena is just everywhere across the internet. You will be amazed at how many people are are supportive of her and working with her. It just says so much about who you are and all of the great things that you do. So thank you for doing that. You're amazing, and you deserve so much.
It's a joy to be here. I'm really glad to have had this time, not just to connect with everyone here, but also with you, because I haven't seen you in like over a year. So this was really wonderful.
Yeah. All right. Well, signing off. Thanks again, everyone. We love you, and I will see you next Saturday. And perhaps, if you let us know, Gena will come on again in the future, and I would love to have her. So let us know in the comments. And anything else that you want to add upon today, by the way, the comments are a really great place to continue the conversation on YouTube. Thank you so much. Until next time, have a phenomenal weekend. And you too, Gena.
Bye, Whitney.
Bye.